go for launch.
5.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting. Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4.
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3.
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2.
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
Welcome to Thrillville!
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your mission commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. Chief Engineer Bob is here by my side as always in the command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is Reconnaissance Officer Karen. And on this episode of Planet 8, we have friend of Planet 8, Will the Thrill Viharo. Will is responsible for bringing so many of us together. Myself and Karen had known each other for many, many years. We met Bob through Thrillville Theater, which is a cinema cabaret that Will did in the Bay Area. And so many other people in our lives we met through Will. And it's an honor, actually, Will. And we look very forward to talking to you today. Welcome to Planet 8.
Well, thank you. Thanks, guys. It's good to see you again and hear you.
Well, it's about time that we had you on because we've mentioned you enough on the podcast. So
you have? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it's you guys starting those rumors. Okay. Well, this seems to be the new way to socialize, and I've been social distancing at least since I moved to Seattle, so I'm way ahead of the trend here.
You're a trendsetter, Will. Always have been.
Yeah, and I'm vegan. That's catching on too. So
there you go.
That's the only food you can find in the supermarket now.
I know. I'm a survivalist.
That's because people like me are hoarding all the beef.
Yeah, nobody wants, tofu, turkeys, deli slices, except me.
Yeah, well, and, it's a good point to bring up with the listeners. At the time of recording this episode, we're still under the COVID-19 self-quarantine. And we want you guys listening to this. Hopefully, we're not under that kind of quarantine anymore. But if we are, please do your part. Let's go ahead and level out this curve and get back to life as normal. Speaking of normal, this podcast is not going to be such.
Is it ever?
Is it ever? Exactly. Will, I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of Thrillville. I love you and Monica to death. I think we're all fans. There were so many great shows, so many memories. Let me ask you, for those who are not aware of the history of Thrillville, how did that? What was the inception of Thrillville?
Well, it goes back to I was friends with the founders of Speakeasy Theaters, Kyle and Catherine Fisher, and we were friends since the mid-1980s when It's hard for me to start one story without looping back to another one. So, and my story is really long and not PG-13. So anyway, I wound up in the Bay Area, age, early 20s, and I was working as a waitron, they call them, at the UC Berkeley Faculty Club in the mid-80s, and that's where I met Kyle and Catherine. And at that point, Catherine was already talking about opening a theater, like one she had seen in Washington, D.C., that served food and pizza and beer and wine while you watched movies. So back then this is back in the mid-80s. So she held on to that vision for a long time. Meantime, I had a lot of adventures with my writing career because, first and foremost, I've always wanted to be an author, and I already had a few novels under my belt, nothing published. So they published one of my novels called Love Stories That Do Violent For Me in 1995 under their small press, Wildcard Press. And I was the first and only book they ever published because they quickly learned that there's no money in that, especially with me. So they moved on quickly to her original dream of opening this kind of theater in California, because California at the time had none. Oregon had a bunch, so they went up there and did some reconnaissance with the Miniman's chain, which really set the gold standard. And then they were looking for sites to reopen, and they eventually landed on the Parkway Theater in Lake Merritt district. And they, it was an old classic theater, and they just put in some couches and, just refurbished it. The projection booth and the screens are pretty much as is. And it took off pretty quickly. I mean, there's nothing like it in California, the Bay Area or California at the time. And I was on board right away, taking tickets. And then at the time, I was coming off my first so-called marriage, which lasted a few weeks. And I was staying with Kyle and Catherine. I was kind of homeless. So they gave me a job there, and then I got a full-time job elsewhere, and I was able to move out and get my own place around the lake. And then I was while I was still in the midst of divorcing this woman who was in AA, she became my first lovely assistant in my show, even though we served beer. So that was all doomed. And the concept of the show was they asked me to just I was the movie guy. Catherine was a chef, and Kyle was in entertainment law. So I brought in the movie knowledge. So I wasn't a programmer yet, but they asked me to program my own show and host it. And I came up with Will the Thrill when I was driving for the ACCMA blood bank in Oakland. You okay there, buddy?
Oh, I'm fine.
All right, I'll just step back from this.
We may have to check him into the blood bank here in a minute.
Okay. Well, one of the drivers there called me Will the Thrill because of Will the Thrill Clark, and I've never been a baseball fan. He played for the Giants, so he would call me Will the Thrill. So that stuck to me. And at the time, I'd always been into the Rat Pack and Pulp Fiction and Betty Page and old B movies and stuff. And that stuff, interest in that stuff was cresting in the mid '90s. Thanks to Tarantino's Pulp Fiction and then later Swingers. And then the tiki culture was just coming up from underground thanks to Otto von Stroheim and his Tiki News publication. Yep. And bands in the 80s like the Cramps, a lot of punk bands were really into that stuff before it got popular. There was already an underground scene that was bubbling up. And I was also ahead of that curve. I was in this stuff way before it was trendy, just like distancing. Back then, I was social distancing. I didn't even know it. Not always voluntarily. Quickly came together where I just threw together this persona of a lounge lizard, kind of inspired by Buddy Love, the original Buddy Love, the Jerry Lewis. So I didn't know. I didn't really have any stage experience. I was hosting Elvis parties twice a year: Elvis B Day, January 8th, and Elvis D Day, August 16th, which will factor into the story in a more important way. For a few years, but they were informal. And me and my friends put them together, and what are you taking a picture there of? Okay.
The screen.
All right, it's none of my business.
Behind the scenes here.
You're Ultraman? Okay. Anyway. Okay. Okay, Hayata. Anyway, Mr. Beta Capsule. So anyway, so I forgot. It was PG-13. Never mind. Beta Capsule. That's innocent. There's no metaphors. No metaphors.
Yeah.
Anyway, no metaphors and no bad words. Okay. Anyway, where was I? So that's the only experience I had. And my stepmother, Ann Helm, was in an Elvis movie, Follow That Dream. And through her, I met some other Elvis babes, quote unquote, like Julie Paris from Paradise and Wine Style, Yvonne Craig, who was in It Happened at the World's Fair, and a few others. I also was interviewing them for this magazine I wrote for called Film Facts, and their sister magazine, Trace. So all this kind of came together. So they knew I was doing that. So they said, well, you can host an event. And so I threw together this persona, and we did it midnights on Saturday in a crime-ridden neighborhood in Oakland. So not many people, but I had free reign. So I booked all these old AIP, American International Pictures movies, because through this, mostly through this distributor that's now gone, Kip Parker. So I was showing, all the old monster movies from the 50s, the ones I could get. They had prints on 35 millimeter because this 35 millimeter prints were still the industry standard then. And then I would show, the biker movies and the druggy movies, and all these movies I loved, that were obscure to most, but I was able to share them with an audience, which was quite quote unquote thrilling. And there was this big carnival wheel there that became iconic that just came with the property. So my first wife spun that a little bit, and then that didn't work out. So then I was auditioning new lovely assistants, and as it turned out, new wives. And one night I showed Jailhouse Rock on May 31st, 1997, and this hot Latina chick came to see it. And can I say that? Well, I already said it. So you'll find me on Twitter if you want to give me crap about saying hot Latina chick. So, but she is. She's all three of those things. So anyway, she walked in and she was with some other guy, and I was like, wow, man. She showed me her Elvis tattoo, which was tastefully placed on her lower right hip, and it was inside of a Navajo signal because she's also part Native American. And it was Monica, and I thought she was Italian. I'm from New Jersey. And I just remember I said, so are you a WAP? And she goes, excuse me? I'm like, Italian. I'm from New Jersey. She says, no. And so, hey, man, whatever I said, we're still married. So, I said something right. But anyway, we didn't get together that night. She came in, and I chose her from the audience, of course, to spin the wheel. And I gave her this Elvis blanket. And I never thought I'd see her again. And she told me later she got really sick that night from the pizza and was sick for a while. Oh. But what happened was, this is May 31st, 1997. January 8th, 1998, I'm hosting an Elvis birthday party at the Ivy Room in Albany, nearby, Albany, California. And I was bored and depressed as usual. And the show was just kind of, it wasn't really taking off, but it was, it was something to do on Saturday night at midnight, and I was getting a little bit of a following. And then I was just about actually leaving my own party. I was so depressed. And who walks up to the door but Monica with this same guy? So I thought maybe they were an item. So wow. She goes, you're the guy that gave me that Elvis towel. I said, yeah. So, she turned out she was a big Elvis fan. So she had this party and just showed up right when I was about to leave. If I had left 2 seconds earlier, none of us might have never met, because I don't think I would have continued doing the show. I don't even know if I'd still be around. So anyway, she came in and I stayed for my own party, and then I gave her my phone number in the back of a picture of Elvis. I put the onus on her. She can call me if she wanted to go out. And I was kind of dating then. I was just divorced from my semi-wife, so I was semi-divorced. Hey, did someone just break wind? Is that allowed? That wasn't me.
Somebody made some noise. I don't know what it was, but
yeah.
Swear to God, it was a motorcycle.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Larry's revving it up over there.
So, anyway.
With his Ultraman.
Yeah, put your pen cap away. So,
Ultraman away.
So, so we got together, and she started. She just, for once in my life, I was in my mid-30s. There was a woman who accepted me just as I was, which was kind of a mess, but she saw a little diamond in there in the rough, and so we were instantly really good friends, and we were just together from our first date. So she started co-hosting the show as my regular lovely assistant, so spinning the wheel and giving out prizes and whatnot. And I just called her Monica Tiki Goddess, and like you guys, she didn't really know what tiki culture was, and then she became the Tiki Goddess. And so we did the show at midnight for a while, and Monica and I, we just hit it off. We were both into the same kind of music and retro culture and stuff. She wasn't quite into the exploitation movies like I was, but we liked a lot of the old music and stuff and a lot of the fashions. And we would take trips around the Palm Springs and Tahoe, and I discovered this place called the Calneva Lodge in North Tahoe that Sinatra used to own. And I booked that for a wedding on May 31st, 2001, before I even proposed to her. Because we like to plan ahead. And we weren't together then, whatever, but we were. And we got married then, and we had the mariachis doing Elvis and Rat Pack music, and, we had free martinis in the Frank Sinatra Celebrity Showroom. So that was the ultimate Thrillville event. But meantime, before that, the show started taking off, and we eventually moved it to our first 1999 January 8th Elvis B-Day. I showed a 35 millimeter print of Viva Las Vegas, and it sold out. No, actually, no, that was a midnight show. That was our last midnight show, January 8th, 1998, and it sold out. And that was the first time we'd ever sold out a show. and midnight the other time. So the management, Kyle, was impressed. So the following week, I booked at Swingers. That sold out. So then we realized we got to move this to prime time. So then they gave me the Thursday prime time slot at 9. And that's when the Midnight Lounge, as it was called then, became Thrillville. I just called it Thrillville Theater. Because I'd actually been on this, Jan Wall, who was a local film personality there. I was on her local cable show, and I kind of made up Thrillville on the spot. She's asking me about my life, my childhood, and I said I lived in this fantasy world, and eventually that evolved into this world inside my head that I called Thrillville. And it's on YouTube. If you look up Will Viharo, Jan Wall, I just kind of made it up there. So that's when we converted the show to a primetime show. I just called it Thrillville Theater. So there you go. And then we started adding live acts, burlesque, retro bands, because at that point I started meeting a lot of people into this retro culture. And I had this great showcase, and the Parkway was getting very popular. So everything kind of dovetailed. And originally they had asked me to create the show and host it to promote the book they published, Love Stories Too Violent for Me, which basically got forgotten because the show took off. So that became my dominant persona. So I had never planned on this. I never wanted to be an impresario. And I know you guys love horror hosts, and I grew up with Doc Shock out of Philly and South Jersey in the 70s. And so I love that stuff, but I never wanted to be a host. Unlike Mr. Lobo or Low Blood Raw, they wanted to be horror hosts. And I wasn't really a horror host. I was this lounge wizard who just showed whatever I wanted. So I was more about retro pop culture in general than just horror. So, but anyway, the writing kind of stopped writing fiction for a long time. And then in like 2001, as you guys know, the year I got married, Christian Slater found a copy of Love Stories Too Violent for Me at a bookstore in LA and tracked me down and optioned it. And then that's a whole other story. So, right. But anyway, that's why I now have Thrillville Press, which is where all my books are. So that's kind of Thrillville in a very, very big nutshell.
Yeah, well, thanks for listening. That's about all the time we have. I'm just kidding.
All right. You can edit that down.
Hey, I got to ask, though, who was that guy with Monica? Did you, bump him off and throw him in an alley or something, or what?
This oh my Guts Life story. Who's that guy with Monica? Monica, were you banging that guy? No. Anything else?
Oh my gosh.
All right. So what were some of your highlights at Thrillville? What were your favorite shows that you did?
Well, of course, Creature Features. The Creature Features reunions with Bob Wilkins and John Stanley and the late Bob Shaw and the late Bob Wilkins, unfortunately. As you guys know, that started in 2000. And I loved horror hosts, but I didn't know about Bob Wilkins because when I moved to the Bay Area, mid-'80s, John Stanley was just going off the air, and I didn't really watch TV then, except Miami Vice. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know any of these guys, and some of the locals told me about Bob Wilkins, and I tracked him down, actually, and interviewed him for the Parkway News, which is remember that newspaper we used to do for the theater? I used to edit and write for. So I interviewed him, and then, people just came to me saying, I know this guy, and so we talked Bob in appearing at a show, and then we had Doug Jones and recreate the set from Creature Features, and you guys were so excited because he was a local legend, and he became an integral part of Thrillville because we did that every Halloween for a while. And then John Stanley joined, and those were great, big deal. There's videos of the shows on my YouTube channel, some of them, and then of course shows with Ray Dennis Steckler, who I liked the Incredible Strange Creatures that stopped living and became mixed up zombies when I was a kid. And, I read about him in the research books, Incredibly Strange Films, and all those guys, Ted V. Michaels, and who I later became friends with as well. So anyway, somehow I hooked up with Ray, and he lived in Vegas, and he ran a video store there, and he would drive out from Vegas with his kids and bring prints, the only prints he had of the Incredibly Strange Creatures and the Thrill Killers and Rafika Boo Boo and Lemon Grove Kids. And he'd show up. He brought Herb Robbins up from Sacramento, and who was in a bunch of them. And you think I talk a lot. Those guys, you guys were there those nights. Rarely could so he would come in, and he was just so into it, man. I mean, because he just had a really neat niche following, and people love that. So I love those shows, and I have some other favorites. The night I showed Mothra 3 times. Like they kept sending me screwed up prints. Like the first time in Thrillville, in Midnight Lounge, it sent me a print with no sound at all. So unfortunately, people improvise the entire film. And then next time they sent me a print with sound, but it was only in Japanese with no subtitles. And so we did the same thing, but at least we had an idea. There was sound. And then I think the third time was a charm, except there were sound slugs, so there were bits of the film that had no sound, but the rest of the film had sound. So I never had a perfect print of Mothra. And then, remember Uncle Bill the Trailer King? He would provide a lot. And then, he used to give me these wild prints from his collection. One time I booked Hercules in the Haunted World, Mario Bava's film. That's what I thought it was, but only the middle 3 reels were Hercules in the Haunted World. The 2 reels on the end were Hercules and Captive Women.
I remember that.
Yeah. So Hercules went from Atlantis to Hades and back, or vice versa. But it was the same actor playing Hercules, so I don't think anyone even noticed. So,
after that first bottle of wine, I didn't notice.
Exactly.
Well, that's the advantage of serving beer and wine at the theater. It's like.
So that helped. I mean, So a lot of the nights that were like completely screwed up are some of my favorite nights, which were a lot of them. So because we had to have fun with it. So it was really about the community and not just the movie. So I'm really. You call me an organizer. This stuff just kind of happened, man. I was never much of a party guy or a social guy, and I just was given this opportunity and I ran with it. And a lot of it was the allure of the Parkway, the venue. It was a perfect match of concept and venue. So I think that's what it was. And then you guys helped make it what it was just by showing up.
Well, I appreciate that. And like I was saying before we started recording, Karen and I met Bob through Thrillville. We, Project Pimento, who graciously allows us to use their covers on our podcast through Thrillville. And obviously you and Monica, lifelong friendships. So it was, that's right. Lord Bloodraw, he's been on here a couple times as well with us.
Yeah.
So it was cool, I have so many fond memories, especially Bob Wilkins, John Stanley. But I remember there was a Shat Fest that you did.
Oh no, Shat Fest! How could I forget that? Yeah, that became an annual thing.
Yeah, and for those of you that have no idea what a Shat Fest, it had nothing to do with
scatological
with what you're thinking.
Not a person.
It was a celebration of William Shatner. And, we saw White Comanche.
Incubus.
Oh, God, that was just classic.
That was
but the first one, we were at the first one, which was Impulse.
It was Impulse, yes. I was at all the Shat Fests.
I think I was too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was such a big hit, we just had to do it every year.
There was one in particular when you moved from the Parkway to it was a Cerrito, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a blind guy that came from had to have been Berkeley. It was one of the universities, and he couldn't see the movie, but he came for you to hear your ad-libbing and the persona of Will the Thrill. And he didn't even, Monica didn't even have to spin the wheel. He got a prize. Every Thrillville, they'd spin the wheel, and there were prizes, many prizes, lovely prizes were.
Oh, this was just crap for my house I wanted to get rid of, but yeah.
Well, we kind of borrowed from that, Will, and when we have our live shows, we kind of, it's not crap, but things that didn't quite make it to the censor sweep. But that was one of the most endearing and sweet moments in Thrillville that this guy could share in what Thrillville was, because it was like a celebration of us, whether you were into sci-fi or science fiction or, whatever it was a celebration of us. It was a party, and we were so lucky to have it week after week after week.
Well, it got to the point where you just go to Thrillville. It didn't really matter what the movie was. It's just, hey, right. Thrillville's on this week, so let's head over there.
I really love Bob's delivery. He's like Stephen Wright. He's like this really deadpan comic. It was great. Yeah,
it was just wonderful.
You can't tell if he's the best persona there, Bob. Okay.
That's the Larry Diane.
The other thing I enjoyed and miss with Thrillville is obviously, the group experience, watching something. And for the most part, the audiences were good. I'm not a big fan of Mystery Science Theater and heckling out at the, movie and this, that, and the other. There were so many great films, Will, that I never would have watched had it not been for Thrillville. And the first one that comes to mind is Eyes Without a Face.
Oh God, that's a masterpiece.
Geez, it really, really is. It's French, isn't it?
And that was a good movie I showed. I sometimes show good movies.
Yeah. No,
how did that happen?
No, it's French, 1959. Yeah, it was. That's a haunting film. That's just a movie. That's really poetic.
Yeah,
I know. Well, not all my films were poetic. Maybe Bukowski poetry, but I remember the night I showed The Girl Can't Help It and with the Devilettes.
Yes.
And Rob Nielsen was filming us for an independent film he was shooting that he used later. He intercut later that with Thrillville, featuring Thrillville. But anyway, what made that night especially memorable? It was packed. It was sold out. And the print showed up the day before with only 2 reels, and they were trashed. So I had no movie. And this is before it was on DVD.
Right.
So I had to actually go home and get my copy I taped off AMC. So we showed that. So I had to tell people who were new to the show, I don't always just like pull something off my shelf, some crap I taped off TV, theater, with and just suck you in with the burlesque band. Unfortunately, we had the Devilettes there, but yeah, and the AMC logo would pop up, and I think this is before they had a lot of commercials, fortunately. So
right,
yeah, so that kind of encapsulated my whole approach to the whole thing.
Well, man, it was a lot of fun, and I remember there was the first time I saw Dolemite, Karen and I.
Oh wow.
Went that night.
That sold out too. That was a great night.
Oh God, it was fantastic.
That was an experience.
You did you hosted at the Grand Lake, and it was
Black
God,
Black Dynamite.
Yes, Black Dynamite.
Years later, yeah, that was fun. Yeah, and the stars were there. Director was there. That's a great movie. Yeah.
So, Will, what do you think makes a great B movie? What are the components that go into a great B film?
Boobs. In all senses of the word. But beside that, yeah, B, breasts, beasts, blood, brains. So it's hard to say because for me, when I was growing up, I liked a lot of those old 50s movies because I was enamored with the era. I was, grew up in the 70s, so the 50s just looked so exotic and romantic. And then I kind of outgrew that, although I like the aesthetics. So it's, as I've gotten older, my tastes have evolved or devolved. Is that you again, Larry?
Another motorcycle, sorry.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, what the heck was I saying? What was I talking about?
Your taste had devolved.
How you were devolving.
Oh yeah, my taste had evolved as my brain has melted over the years. So I think B movies, they're cheap and they're exploitative, but they're sincere. Like these guys didn't have much money, and they had to compensate with their imagination and just their wits. So, and also they're also incidental or accidental time capsules because a lot of them were shot in location. Even it was over by Robot Monster Cave, we called it Bronson Canyon, which you saw pop up how many times. They just had to, they had like 2 weeks or 10 days or 4 hours to shoot this thing on with shoestring budget, and there's just a charm to it. So a lot of the appeal is incidental because it happened to capture a certain era and a certain place and time. But there's something about a guy in a rubber suit with a zipper up the back chasing some pigment in a bikini that is just priceless, man. So, and then, later on I got more into the grindhouse cinema, which was like, took the core concepts of B movies and just, because in the 70s there was no censorship. Mm-hmm. So I kind of prefer those these days. But what happened then in the 70s was Lucas and Spielberg saw what was going on in the drive-ins. and they basically co-opted that for the multiplexes. So they took like B-movie concepts and gave them $1 million budgets, and then you had Jaws and Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was the same thing. It was the same thing, just having fun with these cheap pulpy thrills. But they made them. They gave them widespread mainstream appeal, and then a lot of that stuff, drive-in started to disappear. They found a new home on video. So I think that the appeal of Thrillville for a lot of these people who knew these films, or even those who didn't, was that you could see them again in all their glory at 35 millimeter in a communal setting with beer. So maybe you were a kid, you only had popcorn or soda, but now you're grown up and you can sit on a couch with beer and watch some schlocky movie you saw on TV years ago, but on a big screen with a bunch of other people who remembered it or seeing it for the first time. So
right,
I think that was the appeal then.
I mean, that was the big thing, just seeing these movies on the big screen. And that's kind of where my group Bay Area Film Events kind of was born, was we were sitting in the audience and talking about, hey, we can show some movies and do some stuff. And yeah, it was just...
I'm like, this Yahoo with a fez hat can do it. We can do it.
No, I mean, we were going to see movies like at the Egyptian in Hollywood, and they'd be all very serious and talking about the film and, how it is art. And then there was Thrillville, and we thought, well, there's got to be a happy medium that we could hit in between. But no, I always tell the story about, I went down to Hollywood one time, and I went to the Egyptian to see Inframan.
Which I showed once.
Yeah. Well, I saw it at the Egyptian in Hollywood, and the audience was like dead silent watching this movie.
Oh yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, you showed it at Thrillville. Oh. And it was the exact opposite. Everybody's like whooping it up and having a blast. And yeah, that's where I definitely saw, here's the contrast, an audience that takes Inframan seriously and then one that, has fun with it.
Or doesn't get it at all.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But there, you also did, what was it? Double D Avenger. I said, I don't know if Bill Winkler's listening into this or not, but no, he was there, and yeah, Raven Delacroix, and yeah, it was a fun night.
I'm still friends with, Raven, who was in Russ Meyer's Up, not to be confused with the Disney film of the same name. Anyone listening, if you go to the store or you go to Netflix or wherever and look up, it's not going to be this one. She's not in that one.
Thank you for clarifying that, buddy.
Okay. This was called up for a different reason.
But you also, you were talking about the Creature Features night and that, and you kind of like, it kept getting bigger and bigger. You had like Son of Ghoul at one of them, and you had like a whole gaggle of horror hosts at a few.
Oh, Horror Host Palooza became an annual thing. And that's Lobo would show, because Lobo was a frequent guest. And then Ms. Monster. And then Rock and Roll Ray came out from the Midwest, Rock and Roll Ray. And then Son of Ghoul was also from the Midwest. And then what's his name? Ghoulfinger. So that was the first one in 2005, I believe. I showed Dracula versus Frankenstein and Astro Zombies, also Ted White. Oh no, Double D Avenger was paired with Mark of the Astro Zombies. That was Ted B. Michaels.
Oh yeah.
So it was kind of Russ Meyer, hey, what are they doing now kind of thing. Anyway, yeah. So that was another big night. So we had a few horror host paloozas, and then John Stanley, of course, would be one of the horror hosts. Those are, yeah.
Will, now, if memory serves you, you played I Was a Teenage Werewolf at Thrillville, right?
I showed it because once Thrillville took off and had some notoriety, and I was getting a lot of local press, I was other venues expressed interest, and I didn't want to compete against the Parkway. But every now and then I would do a road show. Like we did I Was a Teenage Werewolf, a 16 millimeter print. I Was a Teenage Werewolf, my favorite B movie since I was a kid. And we at the Fine Arts in Berkeley, the Fine Arts, the old Fine Arts. And Kid Parker, like I said, was the distributor. And then they went out of business right after I showed it. So I hung on to the 16 millimeter print because they were gone. And then a couple years later, I was doing shows at Copia up in Napa. Remember that? We do annual Halloween shows, and I booked out Teenage Werewolf. And then I heard from Susan Nicholson's attorney, who was also her husband. So she pulled she took the print from me, and so that was canceled. So I booked, I think, something else instead, The Spider, I think, which was Earth versus the Spider or something. I don't remember what I booked instead. So a lot of those AIP titles now are all up for grabs, and Susan Nicholson is sitting on a bunch of them, and Sam Markoff has some others, and Corman has some others. So they became increasingly frustrating as a programmer, to be honest with you, because by then I was programming the entire theater. I mean, the fun stuff I liked I booked at Thrillville, and then I just booked second run stuff and other special events for the other rest of the time at the theater. Mm-hmm. So it was hard to be a programmer, man. Just figuring out rights for stuff and availability and prices, and But like you guys, I learned on the job, so I just figured it out as I went.
Well, that's kind of the thing. As these B movies have gotten more and more popular, it's like all these people come out of the woodworks and claim rights and claim that they own this and that, and then it gets tough.
Wade Williams. That's all I have to say. So anyway, but I don't miss that aspect of the business. But the only thing I do miss are my friends. But we're still friends, so I don't have to miss you. So
there you go.
Except I'm up in Seattle now, so I don't see as much. In fact, this is the first time I've been face to face with you, so to speak, since I was back in the Bay Area in 2015 doing a book signing at Forbidden Island.
That's right.
Where I hosted movie nights after the Parkway closed. Forbidden Thrills. Yeah. So I did a Tiki Lounge movie night once a week or something, once a month, I don't remember. Forbidden Thrills. So Thrillville's had many incarnations.
And then
you're still going strong up in Seattle.
I'm walking dogs.
You're doing book readings. I see that Noir at the Bar and.
I hosted this local chapter of something called Noir at the Bar, which is like it sounds. It's like crime writers reading from the books at venues, and usually in bars. Yeah, I'm also always associated with alcohol. People have to be drunk to put up with it. But I did that for a couple of years, and then I handed it off to someone else. But it was fun. I did some local networking, and I met a lot of local authors, which is good, because when I moved up here, I really focused exclusively on my writing. The movie with Christian Slater obviously never happened, but it came really close. But that opened up other opportunities for me, and Love Stories Too Violent for Me was reissued in 2013, Christian on the cover. And then I wrote a sequel to that the same publisher, Gutter Books, published, called Hardboiled Heart. That's what I did the reading at Forbidden Island. And then Thrillville Press has just published a bunch of books since then. Bob's looking at his watch. You can't tell, but I can, because I have.
That's right.
That's my cue to wrap it up.
No, I just got a text. Even though my phone's off, my magic watch still texted through.
Dick Tracy? Okay.
Dick Tracy, that's right.
That was the boss, my dog.
I got a text on my phone, on my watch. Yeah, just a little ticker tape across the front of the watch there. Okay, Dick Tracy. All right. So what, you got to go?
No, we're good. Keep going.
Okay, you awake?
I am. It's good.
Monica slept through all those movies because we had couches. So she when I showed like a film noir or a good movie, she'd stay awake. But that didn't happen very often.
Yeah, she would go up there, spin the wheel, do the intro, and then back to the couch, and then that was it till the end of the night.
She was mommy. She was just like, okay, all right, kids. She's going to lay down the rules. Everyone be nice. No running around naked.
Right.
Okay. And then I'm going to take a nap. That's fun. Don't make too much noise.
Just one of the best wives ever. She was there for almost every single night.
She's the best wife I've ever had.
There you go. Amen to that. We got to know and love Monica as much as we got to know and love you over the years. You guys are a perfect couple and a perfect team.
Well, she's up here working on her dissertation. She's finishing up her studies at the University of Washington Drama School of Drama. So so that's what she's doing.
That's cool.
So everybody's moved on and branched out. But why don't you talk a little bit about some of your books, because you've got a few out.
I don't think we can't do that on a family show.
Well, in broad terms.
Broad terms? Yeah,
that's right.
That's to broad.
I'm happy to say I have one of the original copies of Love Stories Are Too Violent for Me.
The one that Colin Catherine put out through Wild.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. So
signed by the author.
Well, my first book was actually family friendly. It was called Chumpy Walnut. I wrote it when I was a teenager, about a guy 1 foot tall, and it was inspired by the stories of Damon Runyon. It was like Guys and Dolls kind of, but with this little fantasy element. And after that, I just, especially when I put writing aside after the Parkway took off, when I went back to it after the Parkway closed, I picked up this novel I had started called A Mermaid Drowns in the Midnight Lounge, which was named after my show, The Midnight Lounge. And I only read like 30 pages, and when I went back to it and finished it, it morphed into this just completely, wild, surrealistic, Lynchian, erotic nightmare. Can I say erotic? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. You're fine with that.
Don't Google that, kids. It's EROT. I don't know how to spell it. So anyway, Midnight Drowns, which is still my favorite. And then after that, I had some other backlog stuff. So I had been traditionally published, and I did a lot of magazine stuff, but I decided to just do it myself. And I know a lot of artists who did my posters, so they did my book covers. So I issued some of my manuscripts lying around. I typed them up and had them edited, and I put them out through Lulu. More of the Vic Valentine sequels to love stories that do for me, like Fate is My Pimp and stuff like that. And I was still getting checks from Christian occasionally, so I still had that dream alive at the time. Mm-hmm. And then Lavender Blonde, Down a Dark Alley, and then this guy Scott Folks I knew from Forbidden Island hired me to write a couple of science fiction novels with him because he wanted to put his scientific theories into a book. So he gave me a skeletal outline, and I wrote this whole pulp novel that he put his scientific theories in. I think they're scientific theories. They could be like how to make a bomb. I don't even know. I don't understand them. So, but anyway, so that's really consumed me since Thrillville has a live show kind of faded away. Because remember, I took it on the road after the Parkway closed. We did it in San Jose, at the Balboa in San Francisco, and the 4-Star, and different places around the Bay Area. I used to do stuff at the Tiki Oasis down in San Diego, movie nights there. I kept it going for a while. Then we did the Tiki Night, Forbidden Island Tiki Bar movie nights. But then I felt it was time to move on, and the movie deal finally collapsed in 2015 after coming really close with Christian. Anyway, it's a long story, and I decided to move up here because I missed seasons. So that's why I've been in Seattle. And other than Noir at the Bar, I've kept a pretty low profile. I've just been focusing on the books. Mm-hmm. So I've put out like 8 since I moved up here. So I'm really proud of them. When you're 21, just go to Thrillville.net and click fiction.
We'll put your stuff up on the website, Will. Let me ask you, it's been a number of years since your last Thrillville show, and most of the films were, 50s, 70s. But if you were to do one more Thrillville, is there anything that you've seen, in the last 5-10 years that you think would be Thrillville worthy?
A lot. But let me think specifically. Because my favorite filmmakers actually are David Lynch and Jim Jarmusch. But I think what you're talking about is something that has the elements, those exploitation elements of the old B movies, but they're more current.
Right.
So, let me think on that a bit. Let's talk about something else because I'd have to go look at my shelf. But I mean, I can, I'm always programming movie nights here in the Thrill Pad, as I call my little humble apartment.
Right. For those that'll follow Will on Facebook, or Twitter, he's always posting, tonight in the Thrill Pad, and it's usually a double feature. Well, let me ask you this. You and I had talked before recording. It reminds me of The Godfather Part 3, where Michael Corleone's like, every time I try to get out, they pull me back in.
Yep.
You're going to be doing some things for the new Parkway.
Well, it took a global pandemic, but looks like Thrillville hung up the press for good, and then this happened. Oh man! So the new Parkway, which we opened in 2012, different owners, similar concept. And we did Thrillville there for a while, and that's when I started having guest hosts like Lord Blood Raw and stuff to co-host. I would host it occasionally, so I became friends with the guys at the New Parkway, and I still do stuff for them remotely. So speaking of which, when all this happened, the world fell apart, they contacted me about hosting an online movie club. Now, keep in mind, a week ago, I didn't know what a movie club was online, or a few days ago. Of course, 2 weeks ago, I didn't really know what a global pandemic was. So, Larry.
Cue pandemic.
He comes right on cue. So I've always made Larry a little sick. It's okay. Just a little nauseous, but you know.
Larry will be in quarantine after the episode.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so it's called Thrillville Movie Club, and the first one's going to be this Saturday. Well, it'll be over by the time this is aired, but I'm going to do them as long as the Parkway is closed during this crisis. Every Saturday, and it's just a discussion group. So I'm using something called Zoom. Monica, fortunately, uses it a lot in her online teaching, so she's teaching me kind of how to use it. So I pick a movie, and then every week we talk about it. The first one is Blue Velvet, which was the very first movie I ever showed at the Midnight Lounge in April 1997. So I'm thinking more about what you asked me before, though, about what movies. Under the Skin, I just watched last night with Scarlett.
Oh, that's a good one. That's good.
I mean, it's a mood piece. It's a little slow for Thrillville, but, you know, if we had real liquor, I think we could all do it. A lot of sleep until Scarlett got naked, and then everyone would suddenly perk up. So that would be the Thrillville element. I'd say, wake up, quick. Fido was a great one. That came out in 2000.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like George Romero meets Douglas Sirk. So that's a great film. Another film called this is perfect, Alien Trespass, which is like a modern version of a 50s sci-fi film. They shot it like it was made in the 50s. It's in this deep, vivid Technicolor. Alien Trespass. That's another one. It's kind of like, remember Lost Skeleton of Cadaver, which I showed in Thrillville once. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like a campy version, although they play it pretty straight. So I definitely would show that. But like I said, my tastes have kind of devolved since then. So I'd probably be showing a lot of nasty stuff. Nastier. No. But I'm trying to think of stuff people would know about from the past several years. I actually have broader tastes than you'd think from what I've been talking about. So, but that's just one example. Another Ex Machina. I saw that last night too. You know that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I really like these kind of mood pieces. I mean, I wasn't so big on mood pieces when I was booking Thrillville because, it was late and they were drinking and, you had to have some action. You had to keep long pauses and look at that set design. And of course, the newer James Bond movies I love. I love Daniel Craig. Because, James Bond was a big part of Thrillville. I showed all the old 007s.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, with Sean Connery, a couple with Roger Moore, mostly Sean Connery.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a lot of, I think it's a great time for cinema, especially for indie cinema. So, because a lot of that stuff's actually going to streaming. So, they're not even showing it in theaters.
Well, it kind of has to. No one's going to theaters right now.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That process has been expedited. So, Thrillville is kind of a state of mind, and you can do it at home, So.
There you go. Hey, Will, this is the part in the show where we get into our censor suite. But before we do that, I just want to go round robin and see if there are any last questions or comments that anyone wants to make while we still have Will with us here in this episode of Planet 8.
Come on, Bob.
Dead silence. I was waiting for Karen to go, but...
Well, I don't know if you know this or not, Will, but the Zoom film club that you're doing with the new Parkway, are they going to record that and people can go back and look at it, or is it a live thing and then it's gone?
Live. It's live.
Okay.
It's not 3. It's probably still going on. I don't know when this is going to air.
Okay.
Well, probably through April while the new Parkway is closed. So next week's going to be Pulp Fiction and then Repo Man. I might do Dawn of the Dead, the original, after that.
Okay. Well, as far as the censor sweep, Will, if people want to find you, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, web-wise.
Facebook's not open to the public. It's just it's closed. So just anything you want or care to know about me, if you're interested at all, is at thrillville.net. It's all there.
Okay. And we'll make sure we post that on our site. Will, it is a pleasure, my friend, and we hope to have you on again.
I don't know if I have anything left to say, but Bob?
Well, we'll have to have you on when we're talking about a specific movie or genre or something, and you can just come on and just give opinions.
Okay. I mean, but I might dominate the show with my opinion. So don't ask me.
Hey, yeah. So if anyone out there wants to grasp the concept of Thrillville or start getting, let's say people are out there and they're watching Avengers and the latest Spider-Man or whatever, and they want to get into these old B movies, where should they start?
You asking me? I'm sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, you're on the show. Come on.
Thrillville.net. I mean, about where would they find these movies?
Well, how would they start? How would they start getting into this stuff?
A lot of them are free on YouTube. I mean, Roger Corman just posted a list of movies that are free on not YouTube, some Tubi or something. Is that what it's called?
TUBI? Yeah, Tubi is like a new streaming app.
Yeah, a lot of these things are on free on YouTube. But you know what? Amazon Prime has a ton of them. Shudder. I love Shudder. So that's my favorite streaming. I mean, they have Joe Bob. Joe Bob is back on.
Yeah, we have Shudder over here. And Will, a lot of the movies that you played in Thrillville is listed on Thrillville.net.
Yeah, actually, if you go to Facebook, there's a page called Thrillville Theater, and that has a list of all the movies I've ever shown. So Thrillville Theater is a public page. So Thrillville Press, Thrillville Theater are both on Facebook, open to the public. I kind of closed the loop on my private page because I was getting harassed. I think it was probably Bob, but
could be.
Well, hey, I want to thank you again for coming to Planet 8. It was good talking to you.
I went to Planet 8, never left my chair. I love that. That's my kind of.
We'll beam you over next time once we get the interocitor working.
Okay, well, good luck with that.
Once we're not doing the social distancing and all that.
Right.
When we can all be in the headquarters.
Well, I'll tell you, me and Jazz will be visiting Seattle once this is all lifted, so we'll let you guys know when we're in town.
Oh, that'll be awesome, man. So just stay 6 feet apart and we'll be fine.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, it's great talking to you and seeing you, kind of.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Cheers. The thrill is gone.
On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.blogspot.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.
Folks, gather round while I elucidate about a swinging bird not far from the gate, run by a cat by the name of Will, and everyone calls him Will the Thrill. Now this cat Will is a beatnik king with a leopard fez and a diamond ring, and a Tiki Goddess who looks to kill. Zanyam, a Will Thrill.
That's Will. Will the Thrill.
Now in this chillin' neon town, there's spies and monsters all abound. You catch 'em drinking side by side by a Tiki Goddess with emerald eyes. Now if you're thinking of passing through, Will the Thrill will welcome you. But careful, cats, don't play the fool, 'cause in Thrillville, Dad, you've got to be cool.